My name is Captain Iris Quartey. I am 33 years old. I have been a signals intelligence officer for 8 years. And on a Thursday afternoon in May, I was sent alone to decommission a safe in Building 14, a closed administrative facility that had been out of use for 6 years, and found inside it a sealed file with my name on it. Not my rank, my name. Iris Quartey. Handwritten on the front of a sealed manila envelope in black ink. Beneath my name, a date. The date was 11 years ago. I had enlisted 8 years ago. The file had been placed in that safe 3 years before I joined the Army. I stood in that room for a long time. The safe was open. The decommissioning order was in my hand. My job was to catalog the contents, remove anything requiring secure disposal, and hand the safe over to the facilities team. The other contents were standard, administrative records, archived correspondence, nothing remarkable. And then this envelope, my name, a date from a time when I was 22 years old and working in a supermarket in Cardiff and had not yet made the decision that would change my life. I did not open it immediately. I photographed it first, front and back, intact seal, date stamp, my name. Then I placed it in an evidence bag from my kit, and I called Colonel Bernard Darko.
Let me tell you about Building 14 first. The building had been an administrative hub for a regional signals intelligence program that had been wound down 6 years ago. The program itself had been a legitimate operation, properly documented, properly closed. The building had been sealed on decommissioning and had sat unused since. The order to decommission the remaining safe had come through standard channels, routine clearance of legacy assets. My name had been on the order because I was the duty officer for legacy asset disposal that week. Random assignment. Or so I had believed. I thought about that in the car park outside Building 14 while I waited for Darko to answer. The assignment had been random, which meant whoever had placed that file in that safe 11 years ago had not known I would be the one to open it, or they had known something I did not about how random assignments worked. I held both possibilities at the same time and did not try to resolve them before I had more information. Darko answered on the second ring. 4 sentences from me. Building 14, decommissioned safe, sealed file, my name on the front, dated 11 years ago. He was quiet for 6 seconds. Then he asked if the seal was intact. I said yes. He said, "Do not open it. I am coming to you. 40 minutes. He arrived in 37. He examined the envelope in the evidence bag without touching it directly. He read the date. He looked at my name. He looked at me. He said, "You were not in the Army 11 years ago." I said, "I was working in a supermarket in Cardiff." He said, "And the safe, was it listed on the decommissioning inventory?" I said, "No, it was not on any inventory I was given. I found it behind a filing cabinet that had been pushed against the wall. The filing cabinet was on the inventory. The safe was not." He said, "So the safe was not supposed to be found?" I said, "Not by anyone following the standard decommissioning process. It was only visible because I moved the filing cabinet to check the wall behind it. That is not in the standard protocol." He said, "Why did you move it?" I said, "Because I always check what is behind things. 8 years of signals intelligence work." He said, "Good instinct." He said it in the tone of someone who means it as more than a compliment, as a fact that was going to matter.
The object at the center of everything was the file. We opened it in Darko's office. Forensic gloves, evidence protocol, a witness from the administrative division present. Inside the manila envelope were 3 documents. The first was a 1-page assessment, dated 11 years ago. It described the profile of a candidate for a recruitment program. The program was named at the top of the page, a program I had never heard of. The assessment described the candidate's educational background, aptitude indicators from a university placement test, a predicted career trajectory, an estimated enlistment window of 3 to 5 years from the date of the document. The candidate was unnamed, but the assessment concluded with a reference number. The reference number was handwritten in the same black ink as the name on the envelope. The name on the envelope was mine. The reference number connected the unnamed candidate in the assessment to me. Someone had assessed me as a recruitment candidate 11 years ago, before I enlisted, before I had any contact with the military whatsoever. The second document was a routing instruction. It directed that the file be placed in the safe at Building 14 and that access be restricted to the originating program only. The originating program had been wound down 6 years ago. The routing instruction was signed. The signature belonged to a major who retired 4 years ago. His name was Kenneth O'Farry.
The third document was a single sheet of paper with 12 names on it. My name was fourth. 11 other names, all formatted the same way. Surname first, given name, a date beside each one. All the dates were between 9 and 14 years ago. I looked at the list for a long time. 12 people, all assessed as recruitment candidates years before they enlisted, all referenced by a program that had officially ceased to exist 6 years ago. I said, "Are these all officers currently serving?" Darko had been reading over my shoulder. He said, "I recognize 4 of the names, all signals intelligence, all serving." He said, "I need to make some calls." I want to pause here, because standing in Darko's office, looking at a list of 12 names, mine among them, and understanding that someone had identified and tracked a group of people years before they joined the Army, is the moment this story became something much larger than a decommissioning order. If you have ever discovered that someone had been watching you long before you knew you were worth watching, drop a comment below. And subscribe right now, because what the investigation found about the program and what it could not fully account for is the part I still think about. The investigation took 4 months. Dr. Afua Bonsu from the Inspector General's office led it. Methodical, thorough. She interviewed all 12 people on the list. She traced the program through its documentation. She found Kenneth O'Farry through his retirement records and brought him into questioning in month 2. What the investigation found. The program had been a legitimate initiative in its origins, a predictive recruitment project. The idea was to identify high-aptitude individuals years before standard recruitment channels would reach them and to build a relationship with those individuals through academic contacts, through employers, through community networks that would make them more likely to choose a signals intelligence career path when they reached the right age. The 12 people on the list had been identified through university assessment data, aptitude indicators, and profiling work conducted over several years. None of the 12 had known they were being assessed. None of them had been approached directly. The program had simply watched, identified, documented, waited, and then it had been wound down. The records should have been destroyed on decommissioning. They had not been. O'Farry had placed them in the safe at Building 14, not for a malicious purpose. The investigation found no evidence of intent to harm, but without authorization, without informing the decommissioning team, and without the knowledge of the 12 people whose profiles had been built without their consent. He had placed them there because he believed the program had value that had not been properly recognized, because he thought the records might one day be useful to someone. He had not thought carefully about what it meant to build profiles on people without their knowledge. He had not thought carefully about consent. The investigation also found something it could not fully explain. The file containing my name had been accessed once after O'Farry's original placement, 4 years ago, 2 years after the program was decommissioned. O'Farry denied accessing it after decommissioning. The investigation found no evidence to contradict him, which meant someone else had opened that safe 4 years ago, had looked at the 12 names, and had left no traceable record of why.
Bonsu included this finding in her final report, noted as unresolved, referred for further monitoring. Further monitoring. I have thought about those two words many times since the report was filed.
The assignment question. Bonsu addressed it directly in her findings because I had raised it in my initial account. She confirmed the decommissioning assignment had been genuinely random. I was duty officer that week through standard rotation. The decommissioning order for Building 14 had been sitting in a backlog for 4 months before it was actioned. My name had come up through a process that had no connection to the program or to Ofori or to the file. The file had simply waited for 6 years for whoever happened to check behind the filing cabinet. The coincidence was complete, and somehow that was more unsettling than a conspiracy would have been. A conspiracy has a logic. Someone intended for this to happen. Someone chose me. Coincidence means the file could have waited another 6 years, another 20. It could have been found by anyone, or no one. It was found by me because I always check what is behind things, and that decision, to move the filing cabinet, to look at the wall, was mine alone. Nobody had put it in a file. Kenneth Ofori. He was 61 years old when Bonsu interviewed him, retired, 30 years in signals intelligence, not a malicious man, a man who had built something he believed in and had not been willing to let it disappear. He received a formal censure, his pension review was affected, a note was placed on his service record. The 12 of us received formal notifications, letters explaining what the program had been, what data had been held, what had been done with it, an apology from the institution for the failure to destroy the records at decommissioning. The data was destroyed after the investigation concluded. All of it, every assessment, every profile, every routing instruction, except the file I found. That one is in the evidence archive. The 12 names on the list. I know some of them now, not all. The investigation brought us into contact in the way that shared strange experiences sometimes do. One of them, a captain named Rosa, who had been 6th on the list, sent me a message after the notifications went out. She said, "Did you know you were going to enlist before you did it?" I thought about Cardiff, the supermarket, the Tuesday morning in February when I had walked past a recruitment office on my way to work and stopped and stood outside it for 15 minutes before going in. I thought about the program, about academic contacts and employers and community networks, about the ways a decision can be shaped without the person making it ever knowing the shape was put there by someone else. I said, I thought it was my own decision. She said, it was. Whatever they built around you, the decision was yours, and whatever they built, they couldn't build what you did with it. She was right. And she was also not entirely right, because I do not know how much of the path to that recruitment office was mine, and how much had been quietly arranged around me years before I walked it. I may never know. That is the part the investigation could not resolve. Not the file, not the program, not even the unaccounted access 4 years ago. The part that cannot be resolved is the question of how much of your own life is yours when someone has been tending the conditions of it without telling you. I have learned to hold that question without needing to answer it. Some questions are not for answering, they are for carrying. The decommissioning order for Building 14 was completed in June. The safe was removed, the filing cabinet was removed, the building was cleared and handed over. I signed the completion paperwork, my name on the final page, the same name that had been on a sealed envelope in a safe behind a filing cabinet for 11 years. Both signatures mine. One I chose, one someone else chose for me before I had any say in the matter. The difference between those two things is the whole story, and the thing I keep returning to. Here is what a sealed file in a forgotten safe taught me. People build things around you without telling you, sometimes with good intentions, sometimes with careful thought, sometimes with neither, and sometimes, as the Unaccounted Access 4 years ago suggests, for reasons that remain unknown. You do not always know which. What you can control is the moment you find it, what you notice, what you document, what you do with what you have found. I moved a filing cabinet because I always check what is behind things. I photographed the envelope before I opened it. I called the right person. I waited in the car park for 37 minutes. None of those decisions were in anyone's file. They were mine, and they were enough. Drop a comment and tell me your story. I read every single one. And subscribe. I am here every week with a new story. She opened the file. She read what was inside. She made sure it mattered.